It was just after 2:30 p.m. at Vance Air Force Base, and the simulator bay hummed with idle noise. A group of officer trainees lounged near the T-6 Texan II mock-up, half in their chairs, half on their phones. It was supposed to be a training session, but their instructor was running late, and the room had turned into a holding pen for restless energy. One of them, a tall kid with a sharp jaw and too much confidence, had his phone angled for a live stream. He panned across the simulator and then caught sight of Marissa Hale. She was pushing a rolling cart stocked with tools and cleaning wipes, her gray coveralls smudged with grease and dust. Her steps were even but slow. She didn't look at them, just moved from panel to panel, checking cables and wiping down surfaces with practiced rhythm. Her hands trembled slightly. It wasn't dramatic, just a subtle vibration, like static humming through her fingertips. That was enough for the group. The tall one grinned, leaned back in his chair, and raised his voice just loud enough to carry, "Careful, Grandma. That flight stick's not a mop." Laughter broke across the bay. Another trainee added something about her looking like she was ready to take on Top Gun. A third held up his phone, catching the moment with shaky hands and a bad sense of humor. Marissa didn't flinch. She just kept wiping the sim panel, not bothering to respond. Across the room, Major Reyes stood near the admin station, arms loosely crossed. He wasn't laughing. His eyes had locked on Marissa's wrist as she reached across the panel. The tremor was there, but so was something else. A black, contoured brace, barely visible under her rolled sleeve. He recognized it. Not standard issue, not medical. Either. It was a stabilization support designed for aviators, combat tested, issued only under very specific conditions, often after injury, sometimes for covert rehabilitation. His brow tightened. The noise around him faded. He watched the way Marissa moved. Calm, methodical, unaffected. She was either used to being ignored or had long ago stopped caring. The trainees kept laughing, but Reyes wasn't looking at them anymore. He was watching her, and now, he wasn't so sure she was just maintenance. Marissa Hale showed up every morning just before 7:15 a.m. Always early, always quiet. She parked her truck in the far corner of the lot, the same spot every day, and walked the back path toward the simulator bay without drawing attention. By the time the first instructors arrived, the consoles were wiped down, the wiring double-checked, and the software diagnostics already cycling. No one ever asked who did it. They just assumed the system handled itself. Most people knew her as the janitor. Some called her the tech lady or the cleaner. A few, without much thought, called her grandma behind her back. She never corrected them. She didn't seem to mind the roles they put her in, or the way their voices dropped when they mentioned her trembling hands. People speculated, nerve condition, probably, or maybe she'd been an instructor candidate once and washed out. A few whispered she'd failed her flight check and never left the ground again. That would explain why she stayed. The truth was something no one guessed. Years earlier, she had flown the A-10 Thunderbolt II over Iraq, threading through mountains and smoke and chaos. Her call sign back then wasn't a name. It was a letter. After a mission went bad, a classified evacuation under fire. She walked away from the cockpit with damage that didn't show up on scans. Her right hand had never been the same. Neither had the rest of her. She never talked about it. She didn't share stories or wear patches. What she carried quietly. The tremor, the brace beneath her sleeve, the way she always seemed to avoid eye contact without ever seeming timid. She moved like someone who had already survived too much noise. When people were unkind, she didn't react. When they ignored her, she moved around them like water, silent and steady. She chose this life, not because she had to, but because it let her stay close to the sky without having to explain who she used to be. And most days, that was enough. The only time she hesitated was when someone looked at her too long, like they were starting to wonder what she'd done before all this. The trainees were restless again. It was just past 1:15 p.m., and the simulator bay buzzed with half-bored banter as they waited for their tactical flight session to begin. With Major Reyes called away for a sudden ops briefing, the group of 5 young officers slipped into easy mischief. One of them, Louis, leaned back in his seat, boot propped on the edge of the console. He spotted Marissa Hale near the side panel, running her usual pre-flight diagnostics on the sim system. Her hands moved steadily despite the tremor, brushing a fingertip across the touchscreen and logging calibration notes into the terminal. Louis smirked and nudged the guy next to him. "Looks like Grandma's going to fly the bird for us today. Hope the mop fits in the cockpit." The group chuckled. Another trainee, Davis, waved his phone like he was filming. Top Gun Custodian Edition. Their laughter echoed through the bay. Marissa didn't respond. She continued checking the monitor, then adjusted the cables behind the primary throttle system. Lieutenant Kate Dawson stood off to the side, shifting uncomfortably. She wasn't one to speak up often, but something about the scene pushed her forward. "You know, maybe just let her do her job. It's not funny." That only fueled the noise. Louis grinned wider, raising his brows. "What? 2 you on Team Janitor now. Want her to show us how it's done?" More laughter. Davis pointed to the seat. "Bet she wouldn't even know how to start the engine." At that moment, the door hissed open. Reyes walked in just as Davis finished his sentence. The Major paused, taking in the scene, the mocking smiles, the attention on Marissa, who had stepped back, her expression unreadable. Reyes scanned the group. "Let's test that theory. Hale, take the seat. 1 sim run. Standard terrain, low altitude ops." The room fell quiet. Davis stammered, eyes darting. "Wait. Sire." That was just a Reyes, raised a hand. "If you've got time to joke, you've got time to observe." Marissa didn't hesitate. She moved to the seat with steady purpose. Her hand trembled as it touched the throttle, but her posture was firm. Her breath came slow and timed. As the screen loaded the terrain profile, the laughter died completely, and for the first time, the trainees leaned in for something other than a joke. The simulator hummed to life as the terrain map loaded, casting soft blue light across Marissa Hale's face. Her hand hovered over the throttle. The tremor was still there, faint but constant. She didn't try to hide it. She just moved with it, shaping each motion with quiet precision. The T-6 Texan II rolled into simulated flight, beginning a low-altitude tactical route designed to push even the best cadets. The valleys were narrow, the wind drift tricky, and the approach patterns unforgiving. Marissa adjusted trim, banked shallow through the first turn, and eased into a terrain-following descent that clipped perfectly just above treeline. No one spoke. Her feet tapped the rudder pedals, smooth and patient. She didn't fight the simulator. She guided it. When the telemetry flashed on the overhead monitor, Major Reyes squinted. Roll angle, altitude, airspeed, all dead steady. She wasn't reacting late. She was anticipating. Behind him, a few trainees leaned forward, their earlier jokes forgotten. The laughter had slipped out of the room, unnoticed. Marissa executed a low pass over a simulated ridgeline, then pulled into a banking turn that tightened just inside the programmed boundary. The angle of attack registered perfect, throttle adjustments timed to the second. Then, something else began to emerge. The overhead display showed her flight path as a string of glowing points. At first, it just looked clean. Then it looked planned. Each waypoint sat along a clean diagonal, rising from the bottom left of the grid and cutting across with mathematical clarity. The curve eased into a sharper cut, then smoothed again. Reyes stepped forward, eyes narrowing. It wasn't random. By the 7th marker, a shape had taken form. A capital V, not sloppy, not symbolic, precise. At the back of the room, one of the older instructors let out a low breath. Another shook his head slowly. It can't be. But Reyes remembered, not from books or briefings, but from a hallway conversation at a forward airbase more than a decade ago. A ghost unit. No official name. No patch. Only a mark. Left behind after certain missions when they wanted it known that someone had been there. AV. Always clean. Always deliberate. He looked back at Marissa. She never smiled. Never looked up. Just flew. The room was still quiet. Stunned by what they'd just witnessed in the simulator. The glowing V still lingered on the overhead display when a sharp tone cut through the air. The alert light blinked red. A voice crackled through the comms from base operations. T6 Texan 2. Tail number 460. Mid-flight engine failure. Live training sortie. Instructor unresponsive. Everyone moved at once. Chairs scraped. Voices overlapped. Someone cursed under their breath. The control station screen lit up with a live feed from the aircraft's telemetry. Altitude dropping. Airspeed unstable. The trainee in the left seat was transmitting but barely coherent. Panic in his voice. The instructor wasn't responding at all. A ground controller called in, asking for immediate coordination. Ops staff started flipping through protocols. Nobody in the room had both flight command experience and recent hands-on familiarity with that specific aircraft. Nobody but one. Reyes turned without hesitation. Hale. Marissa didn't ask questions. She was already moving. She slid into the control seat as if she'd never left it. Adjusting the frequency on the comms panel, her fingers moved with calm precision. The tremor was still there, but her hand never missed a dial. This is support control. I have your airframe. Listen to my voice. The room froze. Marissa's voice had changed. No longer soft or distant. It was firm, clipped, and calm. The kind of voice that didn't leave room for doubt. Check your attitude. Keep your wings level. Look at your trim. Ease it. Now feather the prop. Her eyes scanned the telemetry feed as if it were second nature. She read wind direction, ground elevation, rate of descent. You're going to glide, no thrust. You need to keep that nose 10 degrees up. Pull flaps to full. You're light on fuel. Good. You'll make the west auxiliary strip, turn right point 2 miles. Line up. Nobody spoke. Not the trainees. Not the instructors. She was flying that plane with nothing but her voice. Another screen lit up with visual from a drone circling the aircraft. The T6 glided low, banking slowly. The pilot's breathing stabilized. Marissa talked him through each second. Each adjustment. You're doing fine. Stay with me. Lower gear. Feel it settle. You've got 2,000 feet. You're good. You're good. Reyes stood behind her, arms crossed. Yafset, the woman they once ignored, was now the only voice keeping a trainee alive. Marissa Hale's hands hovered over the controls, as if she were still in the simulator. But this was real. The trainee's voice trembled over the comms. Every syllable shaky, panic threading through each word. She didn't pause, didn't hesitate. Her voice cut through the static with calm precision. Feather the propeller. Check your airspeed. Adjust pitch by 2 degrees. Pick a safe landing site and keep your wings level. Each command was deliberate, concise, and delivered with a quiet authority that left no room for error. She read the telemetry as naturally as if it were part of her own body. Altitude, airspeed, drift, wind vectors, and terrain all moved across her screens. Each data point absorbed instantly. She anticipated how the student would react under stress and spoke each instruction before the trainee could overcompensate. Keep your nose 10 degrees up, ease the flaps into full deployment, line up with the auxiliary runway, maintain a steady descent. Her experience wasn't theoretical. It was muscle memory honed in the cockpit of an 8 inches hostile skies. where every second counted. The control room stood frozen. Instructors, technicians, and trainees who had laughed at her just minutes ago watched in awe, eyes widened, breaths caught. But no one dared interrupt. Her calm was contagious. Even the panicked trainee began to respond, each adjustment more confident. As he followed her lead, Marissa guided him through final approach, like a conductor guiding an orchestra. Every readout was a note, every correction a subtle movement of the baton. The landing gear extended smoothly. Altitude and glide path held perfectly. The T6 settled onto the auxiliary strip, wheels touching tarmac with a soft, controlled bounce. For a moment, the room was completely silent. Only the quiet hum of electronics filled the space. Then, confirmation came through that the aircraft was fully secure on the ground. Exhalations rippled, not with celebration, but with disbelief. The dynamic in the room shifted instantly. Respect replaced mockery. Major Reyes stepped back. No longer the authority, but an observer. A young trainee whispered that she flew like someone from another generation. An instructor murmured, references to Viper lore. Old combat call signs whispered through years of classified rumor. No one spoke openly, yet the understanding was clear. She belonged to a level of skill and experience that few could even imagine. A living reminder of what competence, discipline, and quiet strength truly looked like. Marissa remained calm and still, her voice gone now, but the authority lingered, filling the room long after the plane had stopped moving. The door to the simulator control room opened with a soft hiss just past 3 p.m. Colonel Harmon entered, his boots clicking steadily across the linoleum floor. The room fell silent instantly, a taut tension spreading from the trainees to the technicians and officers alike. His face was unreadable, every movement deliberate, measured. He walked directly toward Marissa Hale, who stood quietly by the console. Her coveralls were dusty. The sleeves rolled to just below her elbows, revealing the neurostabilization brace on her wrist. As she adjusted a loose cable, her sleeve slipped slightly, revealing the faint tattoo coiled along her forearm. 7 loops. A serpent. Colonel Harmon froze for a heartbeat, recognition flickering in his eyes. Without a word, he removed his cover and stepped closer. He stopped a few feet in front of her, paused, then raised his hand slowly in a formal salute. The room froze. Trainees' mouths hung open. Phones were still in midair from previous mockery, now forgotten. Technicians stopped mid-motion. Even seasoned officers shifted, unsure how to react. Time seemed to stretch as the colonel held the salute longer than protocol demanded. His gaze unwavering. Marissa hesitated. The tremor in her hands was visible, subtle but persistent. Then, with measured care, she lifted her hand and returned the salute. Her posture remained steady, controlled. Even as her fingers shook slightly, the salute was not just formal. It was a quiet acknowledgement of recognition and mutual respect. Colonel Harmon lowered his hand but did not break eye contact. His voice, when it came, carried the weight of command and reverence. He addressed her on behalf of the entire base, thanking her for her service, her skill, and her courage. He did not name her, did not reference her rank or unit, but the tone made it clear that he knew exactly who she was and what she had done. The silence that followed was thick, almost tangible. Some of the younger trainees slowly began to understand the magnitude of the moment. Others blinked, still caught between disbelief and awe. The room seemed suspended, the weight of recognition settling over every person present. Marissa lowered her hand slowly, letting the moment fade, yet the impact lingered. The quiet acknowledgement had shifted the perception of everyone in the room, forcing a reckoning with the truth of what they had just witnessed. Marissa Hale moved through the simulator bay as she always had, quiet and deliberate. The panels were wiped down, cabled checked, and screens adjusted without a sound of fanfare. Her hands trembled faintly as she worked, but there was no hesitation. No need for recognition. The room that had just witnessed her skill was now still observing in hushed awe as she blended seamlessly back into her role. The trainees who had mocked her moments ago avoided her eyes. Phones that had been held high for video now rested awkwardly at sides. A few older instructors straightened slightly, almost imperceptibly, as if acknowledging that they had underestimated her. Lieutenant Kate Dawson stepped forward quietly, her voice tight with emotion, and offered thanks. Marissa nodded once. Simply, her words minimal, enough to acknowledge gratitude without drawing attention. She didn't linger. She didn't claim a victory. She walked down the corridor with the same calm, measured steps that had defined her for years. Small moments told the story more than any words could. A trainee lowered a phone with a sheepish glance. Another muttered that he hadn't realized the extent of her experience. An instructor adjusted his posture as she passed, silently conceding her authority. The shift was subtle but complete. The room felt different, charged with the understanding that strength could exist quietly, without display. As Marissa disappeared from view, the lesson became clear. True strength is not the loudest voice, the flashiest skill, or the attention drawn. It lives in silence, in resilience, in the choice to stand tall when it matters most. Some carry their battles visibly, others quietly. Hidden beneath daily routines and unassuming gestures, Marissa had reminded everyone present that heroes are not always those who seek recognition, but those who act when it counts, often unseen. The bay returned to its usual rhythm, the hum of equipment and low conversations filling the space again. But nothing felt the same. Respect had settled quietly among the people who had once dismissed her. The example she left was invisible, yet unmistakable. A lesson in patience, skill, and dignity. Marissa Hale did not need applause or acknowledgement. She had not won a competition or a medal. She had simply shown what it meant to endure, to act with quiet confidence, and to remind the world that true strength is measured not by noise, but by presence, resilience, and the courage to stand steady when it matters most.